Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special council meeting for Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. Thank you. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. So tonight we're starting with the special council meeting, if we can get an adoption of the agenda for May 13th. Moved and seconded for discussion. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. On page 2, we have the 2026 through 2030 financial plan bylaw number 2061 for adoption.
Moved.
That has been moved and seconded for discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. And on page 6, we have the 2026 tax rates bylaw number 2062 for adoption. That has been moved and seconded for discussion. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And with that, I will move for adjournment of the special council meeting at 5:02. All those in favor? And we are adjourned. Okay, we're going to move on to our strategic planning committee meeting for Wednesday, May 13th. The first item on the agenda this evening is the strategic planning scorecard on page 2. Are there any questions from members of council on the scorecard this evening? I'll just ask a quick question. It's only been a week, so I don't necessarily expect a huge update, but on the youth recreation file, kind of waiting to hear from Jumpstart on the size of the sports box. And then on our side of things, looking at potential locations for basketball or sports box. Is there any update on when we might hear back from them, knowing some of our grant funders have a June 2026, hoping to hear back deadline on the Rotary side?
Thank you. Canadian Tire is working with their vendors to see what is possible. One of the items or one of the locations that we identified would be replacement of the current sports box. Ideally, we would like to replace it and allow for roller hockey to continue. So they're talking to their vendors to see if that's possible. Otherwise, we have created a very small list of possible locations, and so we'll bring that back to council probably first meeting in June.
Okay, thank you. I can pass that on to some of the people I'm talking to, and I just know that time is of the essence, but that's really great to hear. Thank you. Other questions from council on the strategic planning scorecard? Okay, thank you very much for that update. We will be having a delegation from the RCMP, but that's likely closer to 6 p.m. after they are done at the City of Courtenay Council meeting. So we are going to move into the discussion items, and we'll do the delegation when available. So now on page 7, we have the fourth quarter financial update to be received for information, report dated May 13th. That has been moved and seconded, and for discussion. Any questions on the quarterly financial report? Okay, all those in favor of receipt? Opposed? And that passes. Thank you. My agenda is just frozen, but we're going to be moving into the discussion on the tree bylaw. That is on page 13, the tree protection bylaw. Staff has provided us with appendices A, B, and C. And I will just pass it over to CAO Wall for introduction, and then we will get into the tree bylaw discussion.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Minions. Yes, in your last regular council meeting, council, you had a number of questions, and we're looking at making some changes to the tree protection bylaw and you forwarded it to this meeting. In the discussion at the last meeting, it seemed to be that there were two main issues that council is grappling with. One was perhaps not wanting to move forward with requiring deposits when you submit a tree application, and the other was whether or not moving into the protected tree to have the deposits. I don't think it's really necessary to have the deposits. I don't think it's really necessary. When we are getting into larger multifamily developments, we have landscaping bonds that we take. Those landscaping bonds are worth 125% of the value of the landscaping that needs to be done. So we have significant cash on hand on multifamily developments anyway, in order to ensure that they follow through on their commitments. When it comes to single family, there is some level of risk if you move forward without having deposits, but we also have the ability to fine people, or we will have the ability to fine people under this bylaw if they move forward with tree removal that they weren't supposed to. So while you wouldn't have the cash in hand from a deposit, you do have the ability to levy a bylaw fine. So again, if council is not comfortable with those deposits, I don't think they're really necessary. It's not a big item. We have other ways to deal with that same issue. And then if council wants to provide different levels of protection, I would say just take a look at where you're going from the regulated trees up into the protected trees, and you can reduce that number from 60 to 55 to 50, or any number that you wish. But with that introduction, I'll turn it over to council for debate.
Thank you for that introduction. So we will look for questions. I just have one off the start to try to understand better. I think one of the biggest concerns is possibly that it becomes a cost of doing business where potentially protected trees come down during a larger development process and fines are just paid. So in our bylaw, I think 15.1, it says that fines can be issued for up to $50,000 on a development permit, which I believe is for a larger development. How do those fines get determined as far as an amount? I think like more damage than 50,000 can potentially be done. So what would that look like? And if we had very many of those in the past?
Maybe I'll look to Robbie if you want to provide some context on how we would value how would we value a tree on a multifamily project? If a tree is removed, we have the ability to fine up to $50,000. How would we be determining the value of that the tree for the fine?
Thank you for the question. So there's a variety of ways. We can use the tree appraisal method. So if it's a protected tree, like a significant tree, we can have it appraised by an arborist. Otherwise, based on our current bylaw, you can charge $500 per infraction, and that can be per day until it's rectified.
Thank you for that clarification on how much per infraction. Is per infraction per tree, basically?
Yes.
Okay, and have we seen a lot of those in the last 10 years? Those fines are, rough time that we can remember?
Not in the time I've been here 4 years, and in that time we haven't issued a fine for any tree infractions.
Okay, thank you for that. Other questions, follow up from CAO? And then we'll go to Councilor Chair.
We've had a few occasions where trees have been damaged or killed during development that shouldn't have been. We generally, what happens in those instances, you don't need to move forward with fines. You can generally find a way with the developer to ensure that replanting is done in exchange. So it's happened rarely, but it usually doesn't need to get into the punitive side. We tend to be able to work proactively with the developer to make amends.
Okay, thanks. So not to point out that specific area, I just think that on the higher level, it's something that we're wanting to watch for. Councilor Mayor with a question?
Sure, it's kind of moving into a different topic. Is that okay? Yeah. Just going back to the overall approach, there was a lot of concerns expressed from the community about people being able to remove trees for any reason, like that wording. And so just going back to kind of some of the discussions that we had at the meeting, there, consultants started to suggest that maybe one of the ways to mitigate it would be to cap the number of trees that can be removed in a year, because of course, like our goal is to like maintain and increase actually canopy. And so I'm just, as a point of clarification, the way you kind of started this conversation with information from staff, CAO Wall, was to focus instead on the DBH to increase, what that doesn't actually address, I think, the issue that we were discussing at the last meeting, which is the wording of removal for any reason. So I would like to hear how we could address that concern for the community members.
Maybe I'll go for staff, but or through staff may have some suggestions for that, such as capping of the trees, which could be for discussion, but I would say it would probably be at the will of our council discussion of putting forward ideas that could work, but I'll go to CAO Wall maybe to answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to that question is there's a plethora of ways that council could go about making it more difficult or restrictive or prohibited for people to remove trees from their property. The direction that we have from council to date is not to go down that path, and so that's what's reflected in the bylaw. So there's lots of different options if council wanted to walk down a different path. You can cap the number of trees that can be removed. You can reduce the type of trees that can be removed. You can make it prohibitively expensive. Again, any of those options remain available for council.
Thank you. Okay, so for continuing discussion, unless you have a follow-up. Okay, we'll keep talking about it. It's the last opportunity, hopefully. Councillor Haslett.
Right. Yeah, I like the idea of getting rid of the deposits, and then especially on the single family, and then burying the multifamily in the landscape bonding. I think that's a really good way of doing it. I kind of look at this the same way as we had done with the erosion sediment control bylaw, where we were just going out and kind of charging everybody for something that might not even happen. And it was just another way of us kind of adding in one more layer of money to anyone coming in trying to do business with the town. I think by putting it into the landscape bonding is a really good way of doing it. Obviously, the staff has a really strong rapport working with the developers, where they're able to avoid the punitive damages and have them take care of replanting through conversations at that level. I think it's just a really good way of doing it, rather than us taking in deposits from either people trying to build a small scale multi-unit house or a multi-family project on our property. And then the other thing on that was, holding onto those deposits for upwards of 2 years. I just didn't think was really fair. So I'm absolutely in favor of pulling the deposits out of this bylaw.
Just see if there's any first time speakers. Okay, Councillor Mayer.
I just wanted to respond to that directly, because I didn't talk about it when I had my turn. I've heard from some biologists that requiring the bond is actually a really important part of accountability, and that without it, we actually really do run the risk of not seeing the replacement trees that they're committed to. So I would not be in favor of removing that from the bylaw based on that professional advice.
If possible, I might just stop and have a quick, very quick overview from staff, because there's the two things. There's the bonds, which would replace the security up front. So when we're talking about bonds, maybe we'll just get, can we have staff just give a really quick explanation? So in the drafted bylaw, it talked about single family homes having 15,000 and development having 150,000. But it sounds like there was also the bond option, which is a separate than the security. So can we just get a really quick, maybe what I just said, but a little more.
Yeah, so we've got the deposits. Let's call them the difference between the deposits and the bonds. So what's proposed in the bylaws as it sits right now is that the deposits need to be registered, and I think that's an up to that amount. It's not automatically that amount. So we'll talk about it in two different areas, on the multifamily and on the single family. On single family, if we do not collect deposits for the trees, there is no cash on hand that the town could use if the trees are removed. So you're moving into punitive. So that doesn't mean that there is no consequence for doing things outside of the bylaw. It's just that you're going through the bylaw process. When it comes to multifamily developments, we take landscaping bonds. That can be cash. We do accept bonding sometime, but we take 125% of the total value of the landscaping that needs to be done, and we hold on to that for 2 years. Although there is the ability for developers to come on a progress report and say, hey, we've done all of this work. Looks like it's taking, can you release some of our bonding? So we have significant cash on hand in multifamily developments in order to ensure that if things aren't done properly, we can just go out and do it ourselves. If we don't have the deposits for the single family, we don't have the cash on hand to be able to go and do it ourselves right away. But the reality is, on single family homes, you're probably not talking about a lot of trees. You're talking about 1 or 2, potentially 3 for the most part. So it's not a huge organizational risk to the town nor to the tree canopy, because we can go out, we can do the fines, and we can also do the replanting on town property as well. So again, is it better? It's always better to have cash in hand. Do I think it's a fatal flaw if it's not in there? No, I don't, because on the ones that would really matter on your multifamily, again, you're getting covenant. We are still moving forward on those types of properties with covenant protections on the trees, and we're still taking large landscaping bonds. So, and on top of that, they still have multiple approvals and permits they need from the town throughout. So generally, we don't see developers not doing what they have said they are going to do, because they need to have a relationship with the town as they move through it.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. So if we're talking about those 2 items, we'll call them deposits on both single family and development, and then it's landscaping bonds, which is just on the development multifamily. Just for clarity, we're having difference of opinions on that. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. So on the bond or payment issue, I would prefer to have some kind of a mechanism in place. But I'm also hearing clearly from the CAO that it's acceptable to go the route that's being suggested to remove that. So especially for the development properties, the large multifamily, that makes sense to me that there's already a fee structure, payment structure in place to recoup that money if trees are cut down that shouldn't be. So I can live with that. Again, this is as you know, as we talked about, this is me trying to find a place that I can live with, because I know this tree bylaw, protection bylaw, is not going to be what I would draw up on the back of a napkin myself. To me, the bigger issue is this for any reason issue. And so I'm looking at the agenda, bottom of page 15, top of page 16, I think, or 16, 17, depending how yours is numbered. So we have these 3 categories of trees. We have priority trees. Well, I guess we have 4 categories. We have under 20 centimeters. So that's any tree that's really tiny, you can cut, no problem. Priority species above 20, you need a permit. Then we have above 30, this other category. And then above 60 centimeters, protected trees. And for those trees, you need to have a condition for removal. Dead, it's a hazard, it's conflicting with buildings, it's invasive, etc. So we've got these 4 categories. And if you take away the really tiny shrubs or trees, then we have 3 big categories. I think for simplicity, we could just shrink this down to 2 categories. So you have the first category, priority species, greater than 20. Let's get rid of this other category and then come up with something that we can all live with, where we have protected trees, where you need to have a reason, but maybe a bit smaller. So let's say we throw 40 centimeters there. So you can cut a tree down that's priority species if you have a permit. But for anything bigger than 40, and again, what we're talking about is tree canopy protection from the sun, keeping our town's green space and tree canopy intact. It's the big trees, 40 and above, or pick a number, that really are the ones that matter the most. So carbon sequestration, yada, 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 we'll go into all the reasons. So what I'm suggesting, let's remove that middle other category and take the protected tree to 40 and above. Interested to hear what others think about that.
Thanks for those comments. I'd be supportive of a number less than 60. I don't know exactly what that number is, 40, 45. And while it's nice to have the cash up front, it sounds like the landscape bonds could work as our first bylaw out and then see how it goes. Looking to hear from other members of the council. We have Councillor Swift.
Thank you. I'm not unhappy with the 60 centimeter as the protected tree. Just as a matter of course, and I'm happy with the way the bonding works. My question is, and I think I probably know the answer anyway, but I'll ask it. If you have a tree and you just want to take it down and it's one of these big ones, are you able to make a presentation to council or something to allow that tree to be taken down? And the reason I'm thinking about this is it might not meet any of the categories of being dead or being a fire hazard and so on, but sometimes the tree has just gone beyond what works for you in your own property. So it would be nice to have a mechanism where, you know, circumstances have come to the point where this tree doesn't work for you anymore and you'd like to do something different.
Over to CEO.
Yeah, so in that case, council, the public can apply to council to have you waive your bylaw. I think the first thing that would happen would be a conversation with our parks manager to take a look and see the reasonableness of the request. And if they're not satisfied with the answer they get there, then it would be to come to council to have the bylaw waived.
Thanks for that. Good to know that there's a mechanism for that. Should we need to hear from residents? Looking for other questions or comments, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so, you know, I don't actually mind what Councillor Kerr is saying. I think 40 is too small, to be honest with you. I spent quite a bit of time looking around just in my neighborhood alone. And, you know, all those trees that got planted 30, 40 years ago, they were wonderful when they were planted. But a lot of them are huge now and they're out of control. And it's really difficult for people to deal with them. So I think if you go to 60, you're just like 40 is just too small. I think 60 is a better number. I could live with something in between. Like if we went to 50 or 55, I might be okay with that. But to go to 40, you're getting into fairly small trees at that point when you look at a lot of the older neighborhoods around town. And you know, if you're going to start replacing these trees, there's no room on people's properties to put more trees. I mean, some of these, you get up to a 100 centimeter tree and putting 10 trees on the property, there's nowhere to put them. So, you know, I think we got to be a little bit careful with what we do. But, you know, if you had to say somewhere in the 50-55 range, I think I could live with that.
Okay, thanks for those comments. It sounds like we're having some consensus on some items here. Other thoughts from council? So now some numbers have been thrown out, 40, 60, 50 to 55. And it sounds like the landscaping bonds is something that people can potentially work with in this first bylaw. Councillor Haslett.
Thanks. If I could just get a little bit of clarification on the cash in lieu and planting. So say in instance, you cut down a tree and you've got to put 10 into your yard and you simply don't have the space. Can you put one in and buy 9 trees?
Correct.
And then does that money just go to our parks department and they start putting it where it sees fit, or how does that all work?
Yeah, we'd be reinvesting in planting trees on town property.
And then we have a mechanism in place to kind of track all that coming through so that we know whether it's through GIS or.
Yes, our hope is that we can continue the digitization of our planning department. And so this will be tracked through those mechanisms. So yes, we will know how much money we take in.
Okay.
Thanks. I think the tracking after updating a 40-year bylaw will be really important to see what's being taken down and what cash is coming in, where trees are going. So thanks for that. Any other questions from council before we will potentially be looking for a recommendation to put forward to our council meeting next week? But we're not there yet. Any other councillors want to weigh in on the 50 centimeter DBH? Which
I'd
is
like to hear
the
from more people
diameter.
what they think the diameter should be.
That would be helpful. Thank you, Councillor Grant. People might just need a moment to consider it. Councillor Haslett.
I'd be, again, okay coming down from 60. I do think that is a pretty good number. We talked about it a bit of length in that first go round. We're having our conversations on this. Obviously, some feedback from the community's come in since then. I think 40 is too small. So yeah, somewhere in between that, it's 55. That's great. It's 50. I could live with that. As Councillor Kerr said, I don't think this is ever going to be perfect for any of us, but yeah, we can make some decisions that get us halfway there. That's on all sides. That's great.
Thanks for that. And I think for clarification on the security up front on single family, I'm not sure if we're still looking at that on the $1,000 per tree, or if we would just be looking at the landscape ones on developments. That's the other thing we might want to have a discussion on before we get to a potential motion. Councillor Grant.
Yeah, well, I think on a single family lot, if you can come around and fine me for doing something, I will hate you for it forever, but I will end up paying, right? And so I don't see we're not supposed to be punishing people with this. If you do something wrong, there's a fine and you should pay it. But this shouldn't be a punishment to people. And so, and I don't really think that, when you look around neighborhoods, I don't think there's a lineup of people waiting to tear all their trees down to save whatever that bond would be. I just don't see that happening. So I think that if we leave it and we just say, if we catch you cutting a tree down that you shouldn't have, that you're going to get fined and you're going to have to rectify it, I think that would work just fine.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just quickly summarize. I think 50 centimeters would be a fair balance to strike. The tree replacement schedule that shows the different sizes from 1 to 10 is much better than we have in place now. And the cash of $1,000 per tree, should there not be room or should you want to pay for tree replacement somewhere else in the town, I think is all quite reasonable. So that's kind of seeing some positive things in those numbers. And while I like the deposits, I could waive those for now in lieu of those other items we've talked about. Councillor Mayor.
Thank you. I am still concerned that this won't achieve the goal of preventing tree loss on private property. And for me, it's about this being able to cut for any reason. So even if we go to 50 dBH, I feel like it's not necessarily kind of addressing the concerns that we've heard from people. I'm curious about, although 50 is better than 60. So if that's a compromise that we can get to today, then that's the compromise we get to. But in terms of effectiveness, I'm wondering if we know when we will hear back from staff, how are we measuring and when can we hear a report back? So, for example, if we are to make the compromises that we're talking about today so that we have a better tree bylaw than we have currently, even though none of us, it might not meet the needs of any of us for entirely different reasons. How will we know if we're achieving our canopy cover goals or if it's actually too permissive? When will we know? That's a question for staff.
So when will the first report out be? And that's probably not in our term, but a future, would this be a 6-month or a 12-month? What would the rough timeline be?
Yeah, so by the time the bylaw gets adopted, there probably wouldn't be enough time prior to the election for there to be any meaningful report. So I think there's two parts of that question. When could staff report on the number of permits that have been submitted and the data within that permits? Probably any time that's asked. Once we get this going and it's digitized properly, it should be pretty much on demand that we should hopefully be able to pull up the information. To the question of whether or not it's achieved your canopy goals, I think we do the canopy, we update our canopy cover every 2 years on LiDAR. When was the last one? So the last one was a month ago, so we'll know in 2 years from now will be our next update to find out sort of what is happening on the tree canopy within the town.
Okay, thank you for that. Other questions or discussion from council on some of the items we've discussed? As part of the communication out on a new bylaw, once it's passed and established in 2026, is there going to be an educational component piece to kind of share with the community what our kind of aspirational views are on increasing the tree canopy? Because obviously there'll be a nice bylaw there, there'll be rules with it, but is there going to be an education kind of piece that we can make part of that? So there's concerns from the community and from some of council when it just reads you can cut this protected tree for any reason. So part of it is just the messaging and the culture around what are the benefits. There's many benefits the trees are offering. So is there any plan, or would that just come from the direction of council to just have some education and information around why we re-updated the tree bylaw?
I think it'll be a little bit of everything. So we'll be talking about what the bylaw is and why. Generally, our educational material is going to be centered around trying to get people to understand that if you are removing a tree now, you have to come and get a permit from the town. Right, that's going to be the real thrust of it, is that we want to make sure that we're letting people know that if you're going to be removing a tree, either come and talk to the town or use our online materials to understand what process you have to go through. So yes, there will be some conversation around what the town is doing and why, but our goal will be to try and make sure people understand that there are now regulations in place and where they need to go to understand what they need to do if they're going to remove a tree. So there will be a part of what you're talking about, but the thrust of what staff are going to be doing will be much more functional to ensure that we get compliance.
Okay, thanks for that reality check, and we'll figure out how we promote some of the positives around it. Councillor Mayor.
I think I'd feel a lot more comfortable if we could either extend some of the criteria for tree removal from the protected tree category into the priority species category, or if we could limit the number of trees that can be removed from a property without justification to a maximum number. So that was kind of the policy on the fly conversation that we had last time. And so I'm just wondering if I can gauge if there would be support for either of those from folks around the table.
Councillor Brent.
Well, I guess it would matter how many trees you're talking about as max. You're talking about maybe 10? Is that a max number, or are you thinking 2?
I think I would look to staff to make a recommendation, actually. So for me, it's about having some assurance that we're not going to continue to reduce our canopy.
So I guess when I look around our community and I look at my neighborhood, I don't know of one person in the 30 years I've lived there that's just willy-nilly taken a tree down. I know of nobody. I look around and I don't think that this is going to be that big an issue on single-family properties. Any that I know that have come down, there's been a very good reason for it, and you would get exempt in this bylaw anyway. So if you want to put a limit on it, it's fine, but it needs to be a reasonable. People are not going to go around and just start cutting trees down all over the place. It's not happening.
Just a reminder to councillors to speak through the chair if possible. Thank you. That's okay. We're very good at this. So. Okay, so back to tree protection bylaw. We can look around the table. A suggestion has been out there for the maximum number of trees to be able to be cut from that list on individual applications. Is that right, Councillor Mayor? Okay, thank you for that clarification. We have Councillor Blacklock and then Councillor Swift.
Well, if the goal of the bylaw is to increase the percentage of canopy covered, the way we do that, of course, the most effective way would be to change the denominator in the calculation to exclude the military baselands, because doing that puts us right back up in the top 3 on the island. People's trees, people's private property includes the trees. Tree education, wanting to keep trees. It used to be if you wanted to take a tree down on your property, you would go ask your neighbors. What do you think? I'm thinking about taking this tree down. If one of your neighbors really liked that tree, perhaps they'd make you an offer to keep it. A case of beer a year sounded reasonable at one point. But what we're talking about here is now imposing sort of our will for you to maintain to keep your trees through a legislative process, through a bylaw. And fundamentally, I'm not a fan, but I do see the willingness of the community to protect the trees. I think 60 centimeters diameter breast height is a substantial tree and worth protecting. And I'm happy at that number. If you guys want to drop it down to 50, that's fine. But again, it starts with education and people wanting to keep the trees on their property for the benefits we've outlined. And if you don't, you don't. And that's fine too. So for me, it's a matter of accepting the bylaw, that it won't be perfect, but that it will protect those larger trees. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Blacklock. We have Councillor Swift.
Thank you. I'm just going to respond to Councillor Mayor's request. I don't think it makes sense to limit the number of trees that get cut down every year, simply because it could become inequitable at some point, and then you're going to just have to wait till the January 1st startup of the next year, and it'll come down anyway. So I think it makes more sense to do the education, and we know that we want as many trees as we can, and I really think we need to promote our own town programs and be replacing our trees, and not try and govern our community.
Okay, I think we've heard from mostly everyone, and there seems to be some consensus items with obviously I think everyone has some concerns with one part or another of the bylaw, but we're getting some consistent possible concessions. So looking around, if there's anyone who has further discussion, Councillor Haslett.
Thank you. I'm just a little curious if we could talk a little bit about the replacement tree cost in the event that you're gonna be paying for this, the cash in lieu to go elsewhere. Are we setting, and maybe you can answer this, if we're setting the cost of $1,000 per tree, that's obviously town labor, and is that what it is? It's 1,000?
That's correct.
Okay, so if I take down, I've got an old tree in my yard and I want to put a garden in there, and I've got zero sun, and I decide I need to take this tree down so that I can plant a bunch of food in my yard. It's going to cost me $10,000 over top of having an arborist come in and remove the tree, which could be upwards of that anyway. So now we're looking at $20,000 to take a tree down so that you can put a garden in your backyard. Is that correct?
If the tree was over, I think you get to 10 to 1 once you're over 100 centimeters, then yes.
Okay. And does that come into play regardless of if it's I guess once you get to that size to protect the tree regardless, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I think the cost is the cost is a lot of money. Like if you have an arborist come in, it's not cheap. They do great work. They take everything down very safely, but the sheer cost of everything on that is a lot to me. Where did that $1,000 per tree come from?
$1,000 per tree is something that you see in other communities, and it's an estimate for the value of the tree and the labor required and the follow-up required to ensure that they grow and thrive. So the idea is not that you're getting a small seedling, you're getting a more established tree, which those cost more than you're having to go out and plant, and you're having to go out and follow up for a number of years to ensure that they grow. And then you also have to factor in that there's going to be some loss when you're doing that. You're not going to have every tree grow and take, and so then you're going to have to do some replanting there. I mean, ultimately, the value that council wants to set, and if there's limits council wants to set, that becomes your decision. But the $1,000 number is something that seems to be commonplace or industry standard, I guess you'd call it.
Okay, looking if there's any further discussion before we look at making a recommendation for the meeting next week. Okay, are there any motions on the floor or recommendations?
I move that we remove deposits from the bylaw and we put multifamily into the landscape bonding. And remove the deposits from the single family as well and follow the bylaw course when infractions are made.
Okay, is there a reduction to 50 centimeters included in that motion or not included? Just summarizing. Okay, we'll do one motion at a time. And so that motion is on the floor. Is there a seconder? Okay, that motion is seconded. And for discussion. I will be voting not in favor of that. I would like to see the 50 centimeters in concession of my concern. Correct, that's what I'm saying. I'm just stating my reason for voting against it. But we're passing what the tree bylaw changes would be, so I don't want to vote in favor of something that doesn't have the inclusions that I'm looking for.
Okay, well, I'm
Okay,
confused
so-
because Jonathan was just saying that there'll be another motion coming. I assume that's what you were saying, is it not?
Okay, councillors, please do not speak to each other. Let's keep in order, please. I did not hear there was another motion coming, but we can vote that one down and then or approve it, and then we can have follow-up motions. Councillor Grant, your mic's on. Councillor Kerr.
Just maybe logistical question here. Chair, would you like us to vote sequentially on different changes or have like a super motion with all of the items included?
My preference for clarity for everyone around the table would be to have one motion that includes all of the items so we know exactly what package we're voting for. But see you all.
I'll make it. Okay, go ahead.
Councillor Kerr, I think you were going to do what I was going to suggest. This appears to be a negotiation amongst council, which is great and it's normal. If you're only willing to pass the first part of it, if the second part of it is in, the best way to deal with that would be to put an amending motion on the table and find out if the amendment will pass. And then if it does pass, you have both of them. If the amendment fails, you're back to the original.
That works for me. I just would like to see it together. So I'm going to go back to Councillor Grant for a follow-up, and then we'll go back to Councillor Haslett who made the motion.
Well, I thought we would amend that to go to a 50 centimeter tree size as well, so I would make the amendment that we do that.
Second.
Second that. Thank you. Councillor Kerr, does that cover your portion?
That's great as part of this discussion and negotiation at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Smooth as, very smooth. Okay, so that's been moved as an amendment, so we're going to vote on the amendment unless there's any discussion on that. And the amendment was to add, to reduce the 60 centimeter diameter breast height to 50 centimeters DBH. All those in favor of that amendment? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And so now for the motion as amended, is to remove the security up front to change the diameter from 60 centimeters to 50 centimeters. And I believe those are the two changes. Okay, so for discussion. Councillor Kerr.
I'm going to vote in favor of this if it stands like this. This is the least comfortable I've been voting in favor of something in the history of my time on term, but on council, but I really want a tree protection bylaw in place. This is not perfect. Again, this is not something that I fully support in all ways, but it is better than not having a tree protection bylaw And I think it is a good example of council working together to come towards something that most of us can live with, even though we're not particularly thrilled about it. So I also want to just thank staff, Jordan and Robbie and everyone who've put so much work into this, and Randy, of course, because it's been a challenge to get this far, and hopefully we can move forward. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Councillor Blacklock.
Well, similarly, I'm most displeased at voting in favor for this bylaw, and I apologize in advance to all the citizens who will be inconvenienced by the requirements to take out of a permit for a tree that they just simply don't want on their property. But we're gonna do it anyway.
Councillor Mayor.
I am similarly displeased. Yeah, it's, I was reminded of the tragedy of the commons, which is something that we learn about in sustainability, and it goes back to like the late 60s and before, which is this concept that an individual's tendency to make decisions based on their own personal needs, regardless of the negative impact it may have on others. So my preference would for sure be for more protection, and to keep the securities, the deposit for the trees. But this is incrementally better than what we have, so I am willing to make the compromise and vote for it. Thank you for everyone stating the reasons why they are voting in favor. I'll just look around the table before we vote on the amended motion to move forward to our next council meeting on tree bylaw number 2062. Are there any further comments before we call the vote on those two changes to the bylaw for May 20th? Okay, all those in favor of the two amendments to tree bylaw number 2062? Opposed? And that is passed unanimously with everybody slightly displeased, but a bylaw in place that is better than the bylaw from 1987. So thank you very much. Making the meeting interesting to chair. Thank you. And I believe with that, we are going to take a quick 3-minute break, and then we'll move into our Comox Valley RCMP Inspector Mercer delegation, and we'll be back in 2 or 3 minutes for that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome back to the Strategic Planning Committee meeting for Wednesday, May 13th. I want to welcome our special guest this evening. We have Inspector Scott Mercer with the Comox Valley RCMP to talk about a couple different items, policing priorities, trends, and some of the new programs that we have operating in the region. So you'll just have to click the mic on red. And thank you for joining us this evening with a couple of your members also.
Well, thank you for the invite, and I wouldn't quantify myself as a special guest if they've heard me speak before, but I'll go through what we have anyway. I'm going to start off with the quarterly report that speaks to from January 1st, 2026 to March 31st of 2026, and at the conclusion of our fiscal year. So much of the information that I provided to council ahead of time, and I didn't provide it in the slide deck presentation. It'll just be me verbally or verbalizing from the report. But in the future, if it's something that council would want, I can certainly provide a PowerPoint presentation in the future on this. I know the city of Courtenay also asked for this just for visual aids for people that are attending as well.
Okay, thank you. We do include it in our council minutes when it comes through, but if you're coming in person, it might be good to have a quick summary, but verbal is great. We're listening.
Yeah, everyone loves a slideshow, right? So I'll start off with just speaking about the calls for service. So there were 633 calls for service in Comox, which we saw a 19% increase from the same quarter of the previous fiscal year. The most common calls for service was traffic incidences. There were notable increases in calls for service pertaining to traffic, check well-being, theft, mischief to property, and harassment. Comox with the highest number of calls for service was an apartment building. What I can speak to, because I'm sure there would be a follow-up question, is I can't speak to the purpose of, as far as the resident in that apartment building because of privacy interest. What I can say globally as far as the reason for attending that apartment building and the amount of times that we had to was in relation to assisting and providing support service to emergency health services that had to attend a call there. While largely health related based, there was a public safety measure that needed to be met for us to go to these type of calls. We've since engaged with the appropriate health teams to see if we could stymie or reduce that amount of calls for service to that particular building. And I think we're making progress on that. So we should see a reduction for the next for the first quarter of this upcoming fiscal year. With respect to violent crime, there was a 28% increase compared to the previous fiscal year. The most common violent crime was assault for the town of Comox, and there was a notable increase in uttering threat files as well. The hotspots for violent crime we found was Pritchard Road and Knoll Avenue, as well as the area of Guthrie Road and Anderton Road. With respect to property crime in Comox, there was a 39% increase from the previous fiscal year, and with notable increases in mischief to property as well as theft from vehicle files. We saw a 42% increase for mischief to property, and we saw a 229% increase for theft from motor vehicles. So while that is a large number, we break it down from it's a 16 file difference, but still notable enough that we need to mention it. And we've incorporated as part of our morning briefings to talk about the common break-ins, whether it's in Courtenay and Comox, to increase our patrols in those areas. For hotspots for property crime, the downtown of Comox, as well as the mall and the marina, these are more population dense areas. So not surprising that we would find most of our mischief and crime in those particular spots. There wasn't anything notable that we had with respect to controlled drugs and substances offenses, with decriminalization now being suspended. We are seeing an increase in calls for service, both Comox and the city of Courtney, people are calling more on open drug use. And that doesn't translate into arrests or charges or anything like that, just that we're getting calls for service. Our focus still is to maintain on drug trafficking and production, not on substance uses and stuff like that. We feel that it needs to be a more holistic approach, and we work with our external partners through health to try and do it. Plus, there is a lack of appetite from the prosecutions to tackle simple possession files, and they have to be unique for us to get charge approval for them. Traffic offenses. So again, no noticeable increases. There was maybe 2 more traffic offense files in Comox than there was in the 4th quarter of the previous fiscal year. Our focus is still dangerous operation of a motor vehicle and impaired operation of a motor vehicle when it comes to the criminal code. I did not bring our violation offenses when it came to actual traffic tickets, but that's something that I might incorporate in future quarterly reporting, because I know it's something that's always asked about, as far as how often our municipal traffic people are out here and what type of offenses are they stopping them for. Traffic remains one of the higher priorities for most of our communities when we talk about our community priorities and that. And I don't imagine that the town of Comox will shift from that as well, considering that's one of our main calls for service that we get out here as well. That concludes the actual reporting for the 4th quarter. I'm happy to entertain any questions from council on it if they have any specifics.
Yeah, it's good after each section to do some questions and pause. Councillor Haslett.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious, you mentioned that there was a big uptick in traffic incidents in Comox. How many of those were around roundabouts?
I don't want to answer that question. I actually don't. I have an ability to give you that information to date. I would have to go back to our data analyst and see if we can break down specific areas, as well as talk to our municipal traffic people as far as the differential between the calls and complaints regarding those versus actual traffic enforcement. I would have to bring that back to council before you don't have that today.
And the reason why I ask is, in the event that there are incidents around these roundabouts, that hopefully as time goes on, people get better at using them, using their blinkers, that those incidents would hopefully go down.
Yeah, and when we introduce new traffic calming patterns, we usually give it a period of time to actually see if there's any desirable results. There's always that, as you said, a learning phase that goes with it. People that tend to just drive over them or avoid them entirely or just complain and still continue their traffic behaviors and that. But I'm hopeful for all the efforts that have been put in over the past year that we'll see some positive outcomes as a result of these.
Thank you, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things. Number one, when you're talking in percentages, and I always get a little nervous when I hear people talking percentages, because if we had no files in one area and all of a sudden we have 2, that's a 200% increase. But it's actually only 2 files. And so it would be good to get the actual numbers that come. But I look at the traffic that we have going out there, and with the increase in people that the provincial government is foisting upon us, our traffic is just going to get worse and worse. And is there any, what can you do, or what can we do to sort of alleviate some of the issues that are going to be coming at us on traffic issues? I hear more of it. I hear it every day that the traffic's really bad somewhere in town. So just wondering if there's anything we can do to work on that.
For sure. I will point and address the percentages and stuff, and that's something that I can work with this council. I mean, these reports, I want them to be meaningful for you to get information out of it. Some people see percentages as a benefit, but I agree with you when it comes to they come across as inflated, because if you do have a small increase in like 2 files from something that's nominal, it does look grotesque and concerning. And I tend to try and stray away from those. I have included in here as far as the number of calls for service, so we do see a difference in that. The percentage, sometimes people prefer to look at it, but we can discuss that further if that's what's going to be included afterwards. To speak to your traffic question, I guess I would have to ask for a little bit more clarity in terms of like when you say that traffic is being thrust under the problems of it. Is there anything in particular that these complaints are about?
Well, it's just that our population is being foisted on us by the provincial government, and we need to put about 7,000 more people into our community. That's gonna make our traffic worse. We don't have any money to go fix all the roads and things that everybody's trying to fix. So what is it that we can do to try and mitigate some of the issues that I mean, I hear it every day from people, oh, the traffic's terrible, right? Well, it's gonna get worse.
Yeah.
Right, and so I'm just wondering what it is we could do, or if there's any suggestions you might have to be able to help work with that.
I'm kind of drawing a blank right now, Councillor Grant, as far as what I can offer to it, because I mean, it's, we're talking about infrastructure and such that, that would help alleviate some of the stresses, on it. As we found when roadways start to get clogged up with the construction, that, people's stresses and frustrations increase, and, people tend to act out, and we were getting the road rage incidences. And that, I mean, that's always a concern when you get congested traffic. From a policing perspective, I can't really offer anything at this time as far as what we're going to be able to do about that, but it's something that I would like to really engage with you, on it.
Sure.
It makes sense, thank you. And I know on the quarterly reports, we get the numbers also with the percentages, so we'll make sure that the numbers are being shared in context with the percentages. I think I already have the answer because we brought this up a couple times, but on the stats report, there's areas that don't technically fall within the town of Comox boundaries, but I believe for the stats, it's a provincial boundary. And so I know our council in past has brought up that the numbers don't necessarily accurately reflect our town boundaries.
Right.
Is there any, where would we go to relook at?
So I can
those
answer
numbers?
that in two parts. Yes, you're correct, that when it comes to certain areas that aren't falling within your corporate boundaries or limits, there are some areas that fall outside, but, there are provincially mandated or provincially legislated jurisdictional boundaries for policing that don't necessarily always coincide. And I had this very discussion point with, say, like, when I presented to the CVRD, their electoral areas don't match anything that we do. So when we present to them, we have to tease out the data on that. And that's maybe something that I can talk to my data analyst to see if that is a genuine concern, for this council, as far as just seeing what specifically is within the town of Comox. It's just, you're also, I mean, a municipality that has its own policing contract, we're still going to be policing those areas that fall outside those corporate limits. So, I mean, for a point of reference to see how much work is being done outside of your traditional or your actual corporate limits would be of value. But ultimately, it's the hand that's been dealt with, to you guys at this particular point. This is your area of jurisdiction. We don't personally, as a police force, we don't have any say over it. That's something that has to be advocated at a provincial level to change it.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think even knowing if it's making a difference of like plus minus 1 or 2% versus like it's actually making a
For
15
sure.
or 20%
And I think
difference.
that's the conversation we
it
can
was
have.
small.
We can separate that data and maybe look at separating that data. So at least it's a comparison for you to see what the difference is. We had this discussion and debate with the city of Courtenay with respect to a courthouse, right? Does the courthouse inflate the numbers as far as the calls for service downtown? And, you know, there can be an argument made that as far as seeing some value to that, but when we presented the data and teased it out, actually it was a difference of 1% of their total calls for service. So it was nominal at best. So it was more just a perception of it than anything. And you know, the comment of it saying that, well, it's unfair that we get dealt a courthouse. We didn't ask for the courthouse. The courthouse is here, and yet we have these administrative offenses that the police are investigating, and we're getting, you know. And then it came down to, well, are those people actually from Courtenay? Are they from outside? Because this is a provincial courthouse. And we went as far as to actually give them the data as far as how many of those files were associated to it, to people of Courtenay, and that, which was over the majority. It was over 56% that was still associated to it. So I mean, there's value knowing that, but it might not serve the overall interest of what you might think once the data is presented to you. It's just a caution as far
The
as.
one-time exercise, like you said, is I
For
heard
sure.
about
And
that
I'm willing
courthouse.
to work with council
theory.
because I know this has been a point of concern in the past on this.
Yeah, and if it's very minor, we know to just let it be as a jurisdictional
For sure.
slight difference. Councillor Blacklock.
One point of concern that I hear regularly from residents is there's a lack of public knowledge or clarity going on around electric vehicles, specifically scooters, one wheels, electric unicycles. Now, these vehicles can range in speeds from 20 kilometers an hour right up to 70 and 80 kilometers an hour. And we've seen them being operated quite often in unsafe manners. We see youth riding them at night with no visibility. We see people doubling on them. We see the rental blue units, the Evo units, often being used without helmets. Is there an age requirement to operate one of these vehicles, and is there a legal speed in which licensing or insurance is required?
We're just double checking on the age. I can't remember if it's 16 or 18. There is an age requirement to it. The concerns that I have with the bikes and the scooters itself is the speed in which they can operate. Some of them aren't governed. Some of them you can get that I've seen them firsthand where they're traveling at speeds faster than 50 kilometers an hour, sometimes 80. There is no protective gear. It's between you and the roadway at that particular point. So even if it's an adult or a child,
And they're throttle operated. They're
Yeah.
not pedal.
No. And yes, you're right. They're not insured. So I mean, it presents a huge liability for stuff like that. So when we've got, and I understand the value of what the province is trying to encourage in terms of alternative means of transportation, something that is more environmentally friendly, that gets people from point A to point B. But when they've given these operation-free zones and stuff, some people that are at risk are the pedestrians that are on these pathways, the ones that aren't, because people aren't going to. You give them the ability to do it, and they're going to press the limits as far as where they can take it. And we've seen them take off road. So I share similar concerns to you, Councillor Blacklock, in terms of the unlicensed and uninsured, as well as the improper equipment and age requirements. The concerns that I raised when we were first talking collaboratively with all the municipalities on this topic was, in what way can the police enforce? Well, you've opened Pandora's box. Like, I mean, we have limited resources as is from a police detachment perspective. So we can't be out there enforcing stuff where we have people that are just freely using these vehicles. So I don't know what it's going to take. I'm curious to see what the feedback from other communities are on this. But from a policing standpoint, it is something that we are aware of, that we're trying to educate our youth through the schools as far as what the rules are concerning it, as well as the parents that allow their kids to utilize these vehicles, because if they aren't uninsured, they may be liable if something civil is taken against them.
Thank you. Any other questions on our quarterly report? I should have a quick question on the uttering threats file. Is that mostly people that are in person having fights or whatever's happening there, or is there kind of a rise on like online social media? I don't know, like cyberbullying. I know a couple of years ago there wasn't.
Like, I mean, it's a very ambiguous sort of offense. There's elements that need to be met in terms of where the threat is uttered, the identity of the person that's uttering it to you, as well as if you felt that they could carry out the threat. Now, any one of those can be done in person, online, or through a phone call, right? I've investigated files that's been a variety of them, right? As far as the reason for the escalation on this, I'd have to look into it and see what, but no, I mean, we're seeing increased online activities and offense-related activities such as fraud and cryptocurrency scams and stuff like that. It'd be interesting to see if there is an online threat as well.
Yeah, it just seems like stuff online is getting a little bit worse as time goes on. So whether the legislation kind of goes along with it and makes it where you can do something about it is good. Any other questions on the quarterly report before we move into the next part of the presentation? Okay, thank you. Move on.
Well, I have the privilege of having my mental health car, or what we call is our mobile integrated crisis response unit. So I have our health resource, which is registered psychiatric nurse Tara Whiten, and we have Constable Greg Hall, who is our mental health liaison officer, who is present here. They've This is actually their working uniform. I didn't tell them to put this on for the sake of this presentation, and they are working tonight actually. So they decided to come by because I'm the boss and I can ask them to do that. So I did have the opportunity to present this to the city of Courtenay last month on this, mainly because this was a pilot project that I initiated with the city of Courtenay. It took about a year, almost a year, to get off the ground, and it was initially looked at as a possibility to what can we do to address the increase of mental health calls that our detachment was facing. It seemed over the past 2 years since I've been here that this is one category of calls for service that tends to keep going up and not down. And the amount of resources that we're dedicating to it, whether it's from the health side of the house or the police side of the house, I wanted to look at a more collaborative way of addressing this and looking to other police forces as well as our own as far as how they're tackling this problem. This type of program has been successful in many municipalities, and I wanted to see if it's something that use here. So launching into the actual presentation itself, if you'll bear with me. Sorry, it's down. There we go. Okay. So in November 2024, the detachment began early discussions with the city of Courtenay on non-traditional policing methods that could benefit the Comox Valley. Between January 2025 and February 2025, these conversations led to dialogue with Island Health Officer Dr. Charmaine Enns and later with North Island Mental Health and Substance Use Services Director Leslie Howie on the possibility of creating a local initiative to help address rising mental health concerns in Comox Valley. Observable data revealed an increase from 3 to 10% call volume and workload for crisis. In April of the same year, I led town halls in which municipalities identified mental health as a prevalent community issue and focus of concern. In May of the same year, the RCMP and Island Health continued meetings to discuss options for funding with respect to a collaborative initiative to address frontline mental health concerns. The Ministry of Health supported this idea but could not provide the funding commitments at the time. Informing the city of Courtenay of our intent to create this program, consisting of a health-trained police resource and a psychiatric-trained health resource, the city wanted to see a proof of concept before any funding considerations could be made. From May 2025 to September 25, an agreement was made between Island Health and the detachment to allocate one full-time equivalent member from each agency for a period of 6 to 9 months. This agreement led to security clearances, training, equipment allocation, defining roles and responsibilities, and an MOU review. On September 20th, 2025, Island Health Mental Health and Substance Use Services, Comox Valley and Comox Valley RCMP launched a 9-month proactive initiative to meet mental health concerns at the street level and demonstrate its value to the city of Courtenay and the greater Comox Valley. Our micro unit consists of 2 persons, the ones that I just told this audience. So a registered psychiatric nurse, Tara Whiten, and mental health liaison officer, Constable Greg Hall. Their interim work schedule is 4 days on and 4 days off from 7 a.m. to 1900 hours, so that's 7 p.m. Because we're currently utilizing in-house resources to make this initiative work, we had to be cognizant of current workplace needs and respective resources. The hope and plan is to provide more even coverage throughout the week with the possibility of expanding the micro program to 2 police resources and 2 health resources, allowing day, night, and weekend coverage. Program services. So our micro responses may include phone assessment and support, outreach assessment and support, work with individuals who can benefit from a mental health assessment of supportive community plan, apprehensions under the Mental Health Act, supporting individuals on arrival to hospital through triage process and to the receiving unit, on-scene support or direct consult for RCMP members, referrals and bridging to other community and health services. The program objectives. So Island Health for them was to reduce the number of RCMP presentations with individuals requiring assessments at the emergency department while ensuring those that are admitted meet mental health thresholds, improving ED triage and in-house crisis service workloads. To enhance mental health engagement with persons experiencing a crisis to prevent decompensate rather than presenting for acute MHSU and medical attention, and to increase the number of deferrals and connections to community teams. From the Comox Valley RCMP perspective, our program objectives were to reduce the number of calls for service for frontline members with respect to mental health, to reduce the time on scene at hospital for frontline members and return to their substantive policing duties. What Island Health learned from this program, since September 2025, there has been an increased education to the public regarding access, assessments, and supports for MICRE and acute mental health support unit crisis services. Dedicated MICRE team have established themselves with the RCMP, Island Health hospital staff, and community as a trusted partner. They've widened the access to acute crisis interventions, and MICRE built relationships that fostered trust, de-escalated situations, and enhanced supports and provided seamless connections to health services, preventing repeat emergency department admissions. There have been enhanced transitions in care between community MICRE to acute mental health support unit crisis service, resulting in decreased wait time for individuals and RCMP at emergency departments. So while it was anticipated that bringing the MICRE model would reduce the number of people presenting at the emergency department, MICRE created an increase actually in mental health support unit nursing presence on calls. This saw an increase of 90.6% people seen per day for acute crisis assessments between September 2025 and April of 2026. And while they anticipated that the MICRE service would decrease the call volume for acute crisis service, they've since seen the onset of MICRE, the total call volume of acute crisis response was up by 74% from last year during the same period. So essentially, from what has been explained to me from Island Health, is that while they anticipated things to go down, it actually opened up more of a receiving audience or clientele basis for them. They were getting more people that were actually accessing programs through MICRE than those that were presenting at the emergency departments. But what they did find is that the number of repeat visits to emergency departments had decreased for a proportion of the population. Enhanced relations and care planning had resulted in participation and an adherence to treatment plans preventing acute crisis. So in 98 scheduled MICRE work days over a 7-month period, MICRE has had approximately 444 encounters with individuals, an average of 50 persons per month, receiving nurse care and countless legal interventions by RCMP where acute care was required. Projections suggest that if MICRE team were operational 7 days per week and an acute mental health support unit crisis team would continue to see the people at the same rates, we would see an expansion in local acute crisis response of 309% within a year. If it's continued in its current form of 4 days per week, we would project 178% growth in access to mental health care. So what from the RCMP learned from its pilot project is that since the first shift in September, MICRE has worked on 190 police files and conducted additional oversight and follow-up 219 times. That while the majority of work was occurring in the city of Courtenay, it was also occurring in other communities. The community breakdown that we saw from this number was Courtenay had 142 files, Comox had 30 files, Black Creek had 8, Denman and Hornby had 3, Van Bay had 2, Merville had 2, Cumberland had 2, and Royston had 1. Between October 2025 and January 2026, the MICRE team did as many mental health apprehensions as the general duty watch. 58% of the files MICRE assisted on were mental health or child well-being. And since the shift, their first shift in September in 2025, the total number of police hours spent in hospital for mental health apprehensions was lower than the previous 2 years. Between January and March 2026, the total number of police hours spent in hospital for mental health apprehensions was 40% lower than the same months of the previous year. Approximately 69.7 hospital admission hours have been returned back to frontline members. MICRE introduced itself to the Comox Valley mental health community and made long-lasting professional relationships with ACT, ABI, Island Health Mental Health Departments, School District 71, North Island College, CAF 19 Wing Health Services, Probation, BC Prosecutor Service, and local judges. The launch of the MICRE team has also seen an increase in the number of mental health apprehensions that resulted in successful hospital admissions. While we're seeing an increase in deferrals to treatment teams and community monitoring, which resulted in not wasting hospital and patient times for persons that may have been apprehended by a uniform, without the skill and training and knowledge to know when a person is decompensating, this has been a success. The outcome of this program has surpassed our original hypothesis and objectives. Some of the benefits of MICRE can be summarized in 3 points: enhanced client care, coordination with partners, and maximizing resources. With respect to enhanced client care, the capacity of Micro to follow up with clients is a fundamental difference from other frontline units that are primarily focused on responding to calls for service. Follow-ups by Micro enable the team to assess when clients' behaviors are destabilized from what is their baseline. Micro routinely advocates for clients to receive appropriate resources within healthcare and at times quicker access to these resources than through traditional policing processes. The time needed to proactively build rapport with clients is not usually possible for general duty RCMP members who are pressed to respond to calls for service. Micro's ability to establish relationships with persons experiencing mental health crisis has been pivotal in their program's success. In addition to assisting clients experiencing mental health issues, Micro has been able to provide support family members, and this includes education on Mental Health Act, the processes for apprehension, access to care, and safety planning. With respect to coordination with partners, the integration of a mental health nurse with an RCMP member has resulted in streamlining the transition of clients from police custody to the healthcare system. In November 2025, one RCMP member noted that they only spent 9 minutes in hospital with a suicidal individual before he was able to get back on the road. This was largely due to Micro's ability to prepare and receive the client at hospital. Micro makes it possible to bring mental health resources to clients who, without stabilization, are at risk of escalating behaviors that would bring them into the criminal justice system. Micro has participated in consultations with the BC Prosecutor Service with respect to psychiatric assessments. These assessments have been helpful on how clients may be better supported by probation and community. Micro has also established connections with CAF 19 Wing Comox Healthcare staff to establish agreements regarding how Micro could support them and access the base. This has led to the assistance with military members and a member that is less intrusive to base operations and maintaining the members' privacy and community. Maximizing resources. Since Micro started working in September 2025, the number of hours spent by RCMP and hospital individuals apprehended under the Mental Health Act are significantly lower than hours recorded in the same month of the previous year. Micro is able to conduct and facilitate home visits between healthcare workers and clients. RCMP participating in Micro increase the safety of these situations. The complete cost of individuals' mental health issues that can escalate to greater police involvement goes far beyond the hours of police time invested. As we've seen with Tumbler Ridge mass shooting, was although a national tragedy, family of the shooter stated that they had struggled to access help for mental health concerns, even though the shooter had been apprehended by police under the Mental Health Act. Micro program needs. Essentially, we need support. This initiative is currently operating on in-house resources. The detachment cannot support long-term without backfilling. Municipal funding is required. Our hope is to have 2 full-time equivalents, which provides full week coverage, but currently we're operating at one full-time equivalent, which only provides partial coverage. From a policing perspective, this pilot project has been possible from using much needed general duty resources elsewhere to demonstrate its value. This initiative has created a prolonged vacancy on our front line that needs to be backfilled. While our service delivery cannot afford to accommodate this program in its current form without serious discussion on long-term funding. The current projected cost of a full-time equivalent police officer is approximately $258,000 per year. This isn't lost on us when we're approaching municipalities on this. Understanding the financial commitment for just one policing resource will give us partial coverage. Ideally, I would want our Micro unit to have 2 full-time police resources and 2 full-time health resources dedicated to provide 7 days a week coverage with potential extended hours into evening. Right now, we have a gap in our Micro that is being felt across several watches that do not get to experience the benefits of having the skilled team work on their behalf and provide assistance. What we're currently looking for is, while this was largely a pilot project with the city of Courtney and they're debating as far as what they want to contribute financially towards this program long term, is we're looking for partners from our other contractual municipalities to at least maybe initiate some dialogue with the city of Courtney to maybe talk about the possibility about this being something that council will be going to maybe look at providing financial support in the near future. But I think largely, if you want to have a Comox perspective on this program and what it would mean to you as your council and the people in this town, I've invited Greg and Tara to speak and answer any questions that this council may have as far as their work and involvement within this community. And I might turn it over to them if you guys will be happy to ask them any questions if you have any.
Maybe I'll just have you stay for a moment.
Oh, no.
That you can.
No, I did my business.
If that's possible. Thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of interactions and stats to kind of absorb there as a first time. There's a lot of information there. I don't think it's lost on any of us how hard your jobs are on a daily basis. So thank you for your advocacy to bring this program. I know City of Courtney, Viha, our MLAs were all in support of trying to get this pilot going, but thank you for your leadership on that. And on behalf of council, a huge thank you to Tara and Greg. I think to go into that role and see how many personal interactions you're having with people that are all in that escalated state is quite an incredible job to fulfill in our valley. So thank you very much for the work that you do. We're probably going to have some harder questions around the financing side, but I really want to recognize, I think it's an incredible program that's been operating in different communities, and we were so grateful to hear that it was going to be piloting here. So it's great to have the two of you to say thank you in person. And we may have some questions just from a curiosity perspective. The programs that have been running longer term throughout the province, and they obviously have different names, Car 67, and there's all these different labels. I don't believe they're all exactly the same. What are the funding models in most of the municipalities that have kind of been running the program for longer? Has the province ever stepped in from a Ministry of Health perspective?
I think from my understanding of it is that it's largely municipally funded, that if it's viewed as problems happening within the municipality, the province is more than happy to defer. Now, I can't speak from any sort of expertise on it, and maybe I might have to do a little bit more digging on it, but I have nothing to date that shows that the province is taking financial responsibility for something like this, especially if there are some larger communities like Nanaimo and West Shore, and that they have their own municipal contracts. My understanding is that it's being funded by the municipalities on it.
Okay, that's helpful to know. That would come up. Questions from council for Inspector Mercer, or we'll go with questions for yourself first, and then we'll pass it over to your team. Not letting you off the hook quite yet. Councillor Haslett and then Councillor Kerr, please.
You mentioned about looking for funding from contractual members to help commit to the program here. What would the uncontracted members look like? Would that be the CVRD or?
Yeah,
their funding that straight comes straight from the
so the
province?
CVRD, their policing comes from the province side, right? So while we're seeing the large base of work occurring in the municipalities, if there was a possibility for this car to work outside of these municipalities, we could look at JVing the cost back to the province on it. It's a slippery slope when we have an integrated police force, because there's often provincial members that are being supplemented and utilized for calls for service that happen within the municipalities too. So we've got to be careful as far as how far we want to push in terms of recovering costs, because it may bite us on the other end on certain things too. I find that a more integrated approach, and I've spoken to this before with this council, when it comes to a service delivery model, is the best for this area. We've talked about regionalized policing and the benefits of it. I think we have had very hard conversations as far as what the town of Comox feels they should be contributing towards policing versus other areas. And, I would imagine that this would be also an extension of those conversations to say, like, is this something that you need to invest in when you maybe feel that you've invested too much? We also have to be cognizant that there's also the service delivery review that's coming out that will also provide some clarity as far as the what is adequate and fair policing on it. I don't want to get too ahead of my skis on this, but I can understand the concerns, same concerns that was raised by the City of Courtney. We seem to be paying for something that someone else might also benefit out of, right? There are other things that the municipalities benefit out of that the province does pay for, like OCC, our dispatch service. You guys don't have to pay for ECOM, like what the equivalent of ECOM is in other communities. So that's a huge cost that's saved there. Whenever we have an ERT team or an emergency response team that comes into the municipalities to deal with a call, a full call for a team is about $28,000 for one call, and now that's being completely funded by the province for a full-time team. Right. So that's bringing in that we have to be careful as far as what we say, like what is the other people paying for compared to us, because there are some things that we get a benefit out of that the province pays for, and there's some things that we foot the bill and I'm sure the province pays for as well. And I have been in communities where we have had a strict municipal resource to say that you're not to go out of that municipality, right? But then there's also the other thing that could happen too, where it's like, well, then you can't have the benefit of this. And I don't want to get into that, but I mean, that is something that we have to be cognizant of, I think.
It's absolutely something that, we're recognize that there are those other, functions that are provided that are funded provincially. I know I'm not the only one on the table that definitely is always watching to see where the funding's coming from and what we're looking at, because it is such a, it's not a small amount of money by any means.
No.
And at the end of the day, the questions we're asking are really just kind of how can we benefit our community well, paying a ton of money.
Well, and they're fair questions, right? Like you gotta be stewards of your finance, and you have to understand, and you can't just willingly hand over hundreds of thousands of dollars when, you know, that increases your tax base here. And when I come where it feels like it's hat in hand to say, like, is this something that you want to do? I'm trying to present with you what I think is value added to your community. And I think that for those that may be naysayers to the traditional uniform and a gun, this also serves a benefit that we're starting to see, and it's paying dividends, not just in time saved, that's returned back to frontline resources so that they can do proactive patrols, but also getting people the appropriate help that's needed and reducing the risk on the street by having a uniform have to be moved into a mental health environment where they're either A, not skilled enough to deal with it, or trained or knowledgeable enough that they should be dealing with it. Because we've seen the aftermath of when we make wrong decisions, when we're put in a space that we're not experts in. And something like this, because we're always the first call for service that goes out to these mental health calls, and that we're forced into them. But I feel more rest assured having a team like Tara and Greg that are going to be going in and dealing with it. My stress and tension is certainly reduced as a result of it, and seeing that we're connecting people and seeing success stories, and they can also speak to the success stories, not just from a Comox perspective, but from all around, as far as the people that that we're getting the appropriate health and treatment that's needed, and that aren't being exposed or escalating, where people are getting harmed or police officers aren't put in harm's way. I think it's a benefit to everyone.
Thank you for that. I think the program speaks for itself. I think the financial dollar and cents is coming from our 70 to 90% very likely cost escalation coming after this census and the talks of a new building, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So our discussions lately are very finance and fiscal responsibility related, at the same time of recognizing how great the program pilot appears to have worked out. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks for coming, Inspector, and thanks Tara and Greg for the work that you do on behalf of our community. You know, if I think about a Venn diagram of three ministries, Ministry of Public Safety, Ministry of Housing, and Ministry of Health, in the middle, there's that piece of this that they share. And I know, for example, the Housing First model in Edmonton, where, you know, the merge is overflowing, healthcare costs are up. We know it's over $1,000 per visit to the emerge on average. If you take that money and just give people a place to live, emerge visits go down. And likewise, your program keeps people out of a very expensive place, the emergency room. So I've done a lot of emerge work in my past, and I used to hate it when members were sitting there twiddling their thumbs, watching someone in crisis, and legitimately in crisis, but it was such a waste of a resource of the community, and much better ways to actually help that person than to be in an emergency room. So my question is, are you aware of any ways these three ministries are working together to talk about funding or pooling funding from housing, from health, and from public safety to work on programs like this that really touches on all three?
Personally, no. I know this team could not have happened without us reaching across and saying, Island Health, we need help on something. And that went to the Ministry of Health. While they weren't, they were unable to provide a funded allocated resource, they did recognize the need to the point where they reallocated one of their much needed resources in-house to at least put this pilot project together. We are trying to have those continued conversations, because the financial ask isn't just on the police side of the house too. We also have to approach the provincial government and prove to them that there is value and worth of also funding additional health resources, so that Tara's substantive role can be returned back to the mental health support unit, and we can have 2 fully funded people that are dedicated solely to this program, right? So I think those conversations in of themselves, at least between us and the Ministry of Health, are happening, and they have to happen to make this program a success. From a housing perspective, I don't have a lot to offer on that.
Thanks. Can't answer every question. Not everything with lots. Councillor Mayor, and then I'll look for other questions.
I have a couple of questions, but I just want to build on the conversation that just started. I mean, the housing first model works because of the wraparound service that accompanies the housing. That is actually really critical. But I am wondering, because this is municipally funded, it sounds to me like there could be a role for municipal advocacy in helping to connect those 3 ministries. And that actually might be a really powerful ask for the province. So I would love to see us continue to explore that opportunity of kind of bringing those 3 ministries together to access funding. I had a question for clarification, just because I wanted to make sure I understood at the beginning of your presentation. I think what you said was that, oh, letters of support, excellent, that you found early on that the demand for the services increased. And so I just want to understand, is that because it was unmet need, like people were just suffering?
And maybe Tara can speak to that. That's certainly the Island Health perspective of it.
Yeah, okay, sure. I can finish my, because we'll want
hold the
you to speak
question.
into the mic so that everybody can benefit from hearing your answer. And I just want to say how extraordinary the work is, and thank you all so much for it. So I look forward to that answer. And actually, this might be a question for you as well. I'm wondering about what else is missing from the system as these people are starting to access service. What other blocks are you running into? Just so that when if we are able to accompany you on advocating for funding, that we're taking the opportunity to also fill some of the additional holes that you're very likely uncovering through your work.
Well, and when it comes to the municipal partners and such, like Tara and Greg sit on the situation table. So all those people are there, and they're having, like, they've been accepted into this environment and are on the, at the ground level trying to develop solutions that are unique to every individual. And you talk about a wraparound support. That's what was missing from the police side of the house, right? We were going to these calls with no ability to monitor, because again, you wouldn't, your police officer is going to deal with the problem at hand. The problem at hand is to deal with the call, and the follow-up there is often missing, right? We'll defer it to the agency to look after them, but what Tara and Greg bring to it is the constant ability to be in system monitoring, taking care, and closing that file off appropriately, than just severing it abruptly. And it was that severing that we were finding, that you were getting the repeat calls, the people that weren't getting lined up with appropriate care, or that were maybe being apprehended. But while they presented some symptoms that to that officer felt compellable enough to bring them in front of a physician for an assessment, physician at the hospital didn't feel that there was anything other than behavioral, right? And we don't have that training to know that. So that person was beating us back only to repeat the same problem the next day, the next day, the next day, right? So we were pulling our hair out as far as what we were trying to do. So this in of itself makes sense. We're seeing less of those type things. So that wraparound care, we're being exposed to it and we're exploiting it, and we're trying to find other avenues. So the people that you're talking about certainly want to continue those conversations, and I think they're making some real headway with them.
Thank you. So we'll save the questions for when we have Tara and Greg there. Any other questions for Inspector Mercer? Just a last question is, does our program have like a CAR 64 nickname or any other program name, or we're using the MICR?
That is the name of our, in-house we call it CAR 64.
Okay.
Just for the purpose of the pilot program, it's MICR, and it's recognized. There's other MICR programs as such. I don't think that there's any uniformity to the actual program name whatsoever. It's just whatever we brand it as. So
it's hard off the tongue sometimes when we're talking about it with City of Courtenay. So I was just curious if it worked. I hear CAR 64 and I wasn't sure if that was
interchange it with
completely
CAR
made up.
64, mental health CAR, and officially MICR.
Okay, Thank you. And Nanaimo has a program, West Shore has a program, or Campbell River does not have an operating program.
They don't. My understanding is that they were looking at developing one, but they were unable to have the police resource dedicated towards it at that particular point. Well, I think they had the health resource. Nanaimo is actually the one that helped us develop this program. We adopted much of their model for here, and they went from a one-person car, which was successful for years, having the same gaps, to now they're a two-person. Well, sorry, either a two police officer, two nurse car system that they have there. And I can't speak to West Shore as far as what they've transitioned over, but I believe they have a similar program too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So up to your leadership, but I will have Tara and Greg answer any questions from council specifically on the programs. Thank you for joining us on the hot seat. I do think we've asked most of the questions to Inspector Mercer as far as the financing and how it works, but it's great that you've joined us today. Thank you. I'll go with Councillor Mayer just to have the question that was already posted, and then over to Councillor Blacklock.
Yeah, I mean, what increase the service? I think doctors' offices are calling us. People are reaching out. They hear about us. Oftentimes it's just the crisis car. And we're finding people in the community that hadn't been previously treated, or families that would reach out to us and say, hey, I have a son that's been unwell for 2 years. We haven't been able to get any mental health services. So Greg and I are able to go check in and sort of see what's going on. Oftentimes the cases that we're going to see are folks that we watch for a while and see if we can connect to other community resources, see how they're managing, sort of see the family systems, and then we're able to present them either to community supports or to hospital if need be.
Yeah, I think Comox specific, the two major increases I've seen is with geriatric specialty services. So we've had doctors who, through their connection with Tara, have come to us specifically so they can go see people in community. And what we're finding is elderly people who are suffering from dementia or different mental health issues, who don't have family and are being left uncared. And because we're allowing the doctor to get into community safely, that's increasing calls. And the other one was our connection with Canadian Forces Base. Fortunately, that hasn't been a huge increase in number. But just making that relationship is both with active and retired members in the community. We've been able to do a lot of work with them and ongoing work with them.
Thank you. Thank you for adding the COMOX component for our understanding there. Councillor Blacklock.
We talked about a number of 495 encounters by your team. In terms of how many individuals that might represent, like what is the frequent flyer program kind of component of this in terms of, would that be 495 calls representing 200 individuals, 300 individuals?
I feel like that's sort of the superpower that this car has been able to bring, that there has been familiar faces. And I think being on the health end of things, and then adding sort of Greg and the RCMP and Crown, and we've been able to develop care plans for people that have been frequent flyers. And I think that has created a reduction in calls. And I don't know if you want to speak to that more specifically in terms of the work you've been able to do with.
I think one of the major goals coming into this program was to really stop recidivism with the criminal system. So we were able to pilot a program with Crown Council, probate, out of probation, and the health ministry for that exact reason, so that we stop having these repeat customers, as you put them, and that we get them appropriately supported in community. And so far, I think there's been a huge success in that, and we are seeing a value in that work that is allowing these people to not have to come into frequent contact with police. I think one of the things I would say is that there are obviously people that we're constantly interacting with, no different than anything else. But I've been surprised by just the sheer number of people that we were accessing. So this isn't just, especially in Comox, this isn't just people causing issues or civil disobedience or things like that.
in Comox, it's a lot of families, it's a lot of people who are having crisis in the moment. And because we can get Tara there in the first instance, connecting that person with the appropriate level of care in that instance, we don't find that we're dealing with that person again. Where I think without Tara being there, we wouldn't be able to resolve the root cause of that initial call to police, and we would be dealing with them over and over again.
And I think the beauty to that is when when the police get called to a police call, they don't have any health information. So if it's a seemingly confused individual, the beauty of sort of having us on board is I can access their health file. Is this somebody that has dementia? Is this somebody that's recently had an admission for an infection and we're seeing delirium? There's oftentimes people on board that are already caring for these people. We can connect them. And then I think in terms of when you're talking about the Comox focus and this sort of older population, we often see people that don't have a lot of support managing on their own. And is this time where we need to help them seek higher levels of care to be assessed by Jerry psych teams? I think oftentimes there's been folks that their police have been managing in community, and we get to step in and go, hey, those are our people. We need to push the healthcare system to do more here. And that's been the collaboration we've been able to have, which is this person does not need to go to cells, this person needs to go to hospital, and we can sort of look at the full picture and we're able to work together. Which allows us to do sort of the communication around, how busy ER is. It's like I develop relationships with the staff. I can call and say, hey, we're coming. We have a section 28. They can get everything ready. Police can support. We can get somebody into like whatever panels or containment we need to have. We can medicate. We can do all that in a swoop because it's continuous, as opposed to the police coming, just showing up and nobody at the hospital knowing what's coming. We can navigate around the traumas that come in, just like today. And then oftentimes there's calls to support the ACT teams, the mental health crisis team in the community with medication. If Greg and I can go out and do either the injectable, provide the medication, or help other staff to prevent them from checking in at all. And I think that allows us a lot of flexibility to keep people in community and away from emerge.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Councilor Book? Okay, other questions for Tara and Greg? Councilor Kerr.
Well, just on the stats, like, I mean, if reducing the number of hours in Emerge, reducing admissions, reducing visits to Emerge, if you had stats on that and like presented that to the Ministry of Health, and again, maybe this is a conversation that the politicians can help you have, but then say, okay, we have saved the Comox Valley Hospital $1.5 million in the last year. So give us another resource. I mean, I think that's the kind of conversation you have to have is what's the cost benefit analysis? We know it's there, but without the stats, we it's just going to give you more ammunition. So I think that's my humble suggestion to collect those stats and do the dollars.
I think it works with the RCP though as well. The amount of money we're saving by streamlining service models and not like going repeat time and time again and not actually solving the root cause. I think that there's an efficiency in funding. So you see that sticker price, which is difficult for anyone doctor in the community, right? But it's tough to then explain how much money we save the community, even just the two of us. And then unfortunately, unless you're there experiencing it firsthand, it's just a tough figure to capture.
Thank you for that. I think that's our big decision is how to do resource allocation and hope to see these great results. And in time, maybe it's a patchwork of funding that comes through in the meantime of figuring out the resource allocation of these hybrid programs that are really working. I think that's all the questions we have for the two of you. Thank you again so much for sharing your experience and for being in those roles. I think we've answered most of the questions around the MICR or the mental health card. Inspector Mercer, do you have any further presentations? We have potentially we might have some more questions around priorities and general policing questions, but is that the formal presentation?
That's the formal presentation. I just, one last point as far as the microcar goes. Some of the comments that I've had to answer for is, we have a lot of people working in this mental health space within this community. We have a lot of grants that are out there for people that are working. We have a lot of peer advocates. We have a lot of support workers. What makes this unit distinguishingly different? What, are we just duplicating the work of other people? And that's where I know Tara and Greg can really speak to the difference of it. They have abilities and skills that shouldn't be overlooked, but more importantly, they deal with acute cases. These, like I said, these calls for service are coming straight to us, and we don't have the ability to defer them to other groups within the community. We have a responsibility to go to it. And I need to be clear as far as what the response looks like. It's not them, we get the call and we send them out to the call. The police officer still has to go to the call first. Now, the time on scene that a police officer spends on there, and again, it's reduced significantly because we have to make the workspace safe. I can't introduce Tara into an environment that is going to put her at risk, right? Because she's a civilian. So the officer will go to the call to ensure that it's safe. And then at that point, they come in, and sometimes simultaneously at the same time, once the area is safe, to take over the call. And what do they, when we say, families reach out to us and they don't know how to deal with it, well, that seems like a peer advocate sort of responsibility. But again, the skill set that Tara spoke to and the access and resources that they get, that's just a fringe benefit that we also provide for families that are struggling. But there's the acute cases that we're dealing with. We only have the ability to apprehend. Civilian-based groups don't do that, right? So we also need to make sure that when we're pulling that metaphorical trigger to bring them in front of the hospital, that we're doing it in the right fashion, what's best for the community and best for that individual, so we're not wasting anyone's time. So it goes to Councillor Kerr's comment of like saving money in the long run, but there's also a public safety aspect to this that can't be devalued when we're talking about why this crew and not just someone else that can do it within the community. And that's not to diminish the work of the other people that are working in our space, but I see this as definitely different than the work that's already being done, that we're starting to see the cost dividends as well as the return value of it, not only the relationships that we're making within the community, but operationally from a policing side of the house, when we are already facing resource issues to begin with. And I'm utilizing this car in-house and bringing it along is because the value that we're getting returned back to the front line is there. But Greg doesn't fully replace a missing general duty member either, right? It's a specialty role, and the time we're saving at hospital and stuff like that, and over time, yes, it's making a difference in terms of the operational impact and public safety aspect, but the reallocation of Greg from the line in there without backfilling won't work as well.
Thanks for the clarification. I was missing that first interaction still happens, and the goal is to save the time spent, but there's the call volume there won't go down with that first interaction, which makes sense. Thanks for that clarification. Other questions from council on either resourcing? We won't get into the funding request this evening. It'll come on a future meeting, and it's also coming up at our leadership tables. Can you speak to on the number of vacancies that's kind of statistically, I think, I don't want to say an all-time high, I don't know if that's right, but is there any ways that overtime is, I don't know how the overtime works with the RCMP, but having so many vacancies, there's that potential that costs go up for having to fill those with overtime.
There's some dynamics. There's some dynamics to that. So certainly I can speak to the current resource issues that we have. This has not been a great year for us as a detachment. We've had a historic high in terms of vacancies. So we've right now we're currently running at 7 hard vacancies and 15 soft vacancies. Hard vacancies there are absolutely no one in that role to do, and it's gone out to staffing to backfill them. Those are staffing transactions that have happened. The good news that I can report out of the 7 that we have currently, 6 people are named for that. We're waiting. The last remaining one is a recruit We're just waiting for a recruit to be named, and I just had recent conversations with the division to try and push the urgency to get a recruit. Why a recruit is because a recruit we can mold here and have someone that can contribute to this community for a long period of time. We have a lot of members that have served here for 15, 20 plus years, right? And eventually they're going to retire. And the last time we had a recruit is over 6 years ago, which to me is odd because every detachment I worked in previous to this one, it was more often than not you had more recruits and officers underneath the service of 5 years than people that were 10 years plus. This place, like I said, is a unicorn. So that's the good news to the hard vacancies. The 15 soft vacancies, so that will be our long-term off-duty sick, our duty to accommodate, our gradual return to works, our paternity leave people, where there's long-term absences. With that, I can't speak to the health profiles of these individuals, but from what I can say is that they've been off for a long period of time, and some of them there's no foreseeable end. Now, we do have conversations to try, and if we know that that person's not going to be returning in a full-time operational role, eventually, through coordination and support through our health division health services, a decision is made as to whether we continue to support this person or we look to medically discharge them. Again, won't speak to the specifics of where we're currently at with those individual files, but what I want to highlight is that's out of so 7 hard vacancies, 15 soft vacancies, 22 out of 64 full-time equivalents for our detachment. That's a considerable amount of our detachment resources, and these are all general duty members, most of them. So that's a lot of frontline people that aren't responding to calls. To offset these issues, I've had to reallocate resources within house. So I've had to collapse 2 units, 2 specialty units. So our crime reduction unit and our bike unit have been folded back temporarily into our frontline response to ensure that we're meeting our calls for service and our service delivery needs. So when we talk about value of a type of a pilot project like Miker, when I'm experiencing an increase in resource issues right now, is because I truly do believe in the purpose of this program. I was criticized in-house as far as keeping this along, but that's how much value I put on this particular unit and what they can do for this community. That's just my side sell on the Miker. But how it affects you guys, the town of Comox is responsible for 11 full-time equivalents. So out of the 11 full-time equivalents, we have 1 hard vacancy, 1 long-term off-duty sick, and 3 people that are on either light duties or duty to accommodate currently right now. So that's 5 out of the 11 people that you guys are funding that aren't rotable resources or acting in a full-time operational capacity. Now, we worked in concert with health services to ensure that people that can work in some capacity are at work and working in some capacity, but then there's some that just can't be brought into the work environment, and we're trying to minimize that. You do not pay for that person after 30 days. After 30 days, that goes on to a health collator, okay, and the province or the feds pay for that in a combination thereof. So that is money that is eventually returned back to you, so that you're not being costed for that. That's not to say that that's a great thing, but it's just so that you know that money will be returned, and it's not just someone at home that can't work currently that you guys are paying for. But there's the long-term effects of that eventually happen, in which that work burden gets shifted down to the people that are currently working. What I can talk about the workloads right now is that for our workloads for our detachment currently is the highest in the province. We are twice the provincial average. For municipalities over 15,000 people. So that is a burden that we're having to take on currently right now. Largely that is Courtney-based workload, not Comox-based workload. But considering we have an integrated detachment, it's just fair for me to express that across the board so you understand that a little bit better. I'm happy to take any questions with respect to that before I move on, because I just dumped a whole bunch of stuff on you.
Thanks. I'll look around. It was helpful. I know, when we pay for 11.3, but there's 40% plus vacancies, the concern was how does that get allocated back? So knowing that it's 30 days and then it goes over to the federal or provincial government is a helpful number to understand.
And Rob's, not his full-time job, but sometimes his full-time job is solely looking after the profiles of these people that are off duty, so they're not falling through the cracks, that we're not losing sight of where they are in their health treatment plan. Like, we spend a lot of time, because at the end of the day, this costs a lot of money for the municipalities, and we understand that and the impact, as well as there's a human element to it too, that we want them to stay connected and not feel forgotten, because we want their full-time job is to get better and come back to the workforce, and we want to support that, right? We don't want to lose sight of it.
Thank you. I think all organizations have that same balance in management. So
Yeah.
understood on that front. Councillor Grant, did you have your hand?
Yeah, sure, I'll go. Yeah, I actually was, I've been thinking about this quite a bit lately, and, you know, it seems to me that you have a problem at the RCMP and that you need more officers. And, you know, we have a problem in that we just can't continue to tax people to pay for it, right? There's just, we both have the same problem. But it seems to me the missing link in this is how much the province is actually paying. I have no idea how much they pay in the regional district. I know you're regional police, but we get charged for 11 officers. And we can't afford to give you 9 more officers or whatever that number is going to be. It's just not there. You know, we're hitting people with 8 and 10% tax increases, and they're done with it. So, you know, I think that we need to get together, sit down with probably you and someone from the province and our MLA, and come up with a formula here that's going to work. The missing link for me is that I don't know what the regional district or the province in that case are actually contributing, but I think that it's probably up to them to put more money into this system. I mean, you can't continue to go the way we're going. You can't continue to have officers out there that are being overworked, and we can't continue to pay for more. So something's wrong in the middle here that needs to be addressed. And I think that if we could get together and sit down and probably find a solution at some point. I know in Vancouver, they were doing a review of the police over there, and I was part of that conversation for quite some time, and then it just kind of stopped. So I don't know whatever happened to that. But like, there's a funding issue for sure here. And I think part of it is also to do with the fact that we're a small community in amongst 3 other communities, in amongst 3 regional areas. And it's not typical of what most areas would be. Most areas would have a municipality and a regional district. And that would be much more easy to figure out how to make it work, but it's much harder with us. And so, you know, it's just, you know, there's got to be a different way to do it than the way we are. I mean, this program you brought up tonight is brilliant. I love it, but how are we going to pay for it? Our citizens are done with paying these high taxes. Like, you know, we can do it again, but at our own peril, right? And so, you know, I'm just not sure what the answer is, but I think that collectively we could probably come up with something. And I think the province needs to be a part of that discussion.
Yeah.
So that's just my take.
No, and it's fair comment and something that I hear speaking to the other municipalities, especially when it talks about fair and equitable contributions to policing. Policing, it keeps getting higher and higher. It's probably one of the largest budgeted items on most municipal budget lines, right? When it comes to it, with respect to our detachment out of the 64. So Mayor Minions had mentioned it's 11.3 because you guys cost share for a police dog with the city of Courtenay. And then Courtenay is 31.7. So then you do the math from that. That's terrible at it. I'm looking at Councillor Kerr here. It's you're bad at math too. Okay. What's that? Yeah. So then they're responsible for 20, right? Did you just do a sign of 43? Okay. All right. So 21. So they're responsible for 21 resources, and with Cumberland, right? And with Cumberland potentially rolling over they're going to have to assume a municipal contract on that. And I know that Mayor Brown is also feeling the pinch as far as how they're going to be able to afford that as well. So I mean, we're very alive to the whole thing, and we understand the concerns from the municipalities. And it's like I said, coming here and discussing policing resources, we understand that the cost impact, and maybe further discussions need to be had, but that's certainly above, unfortunately, my pay grade and my responsibilities, but I'm happy to engage in whatever way I can possible with this council to talk about other ways to get funding to us.
Thanks for those comments. I think the service review, do we know when that's coming back to us as far as?
I know it's at the upper
date?
leadership level right now for comments and
Final.
review and maybe amendments. I don't know. But no, I don't have a timeline. I would
Great.
like to say within weeks on it. I'm hoping, but
Summer.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Just curious
Yeah.
if that date was known. And then the ongoing conversations about a regional building continue. So we
For
won't
sure.
dabble into that too much. Councillor Mayor has a question.
Sorry, it's not a question. It's actually more of a comment and more for council or just thinking about, well, it's a comment on the advocacy side. So I really think that bringing together multiple ministries in the province is the way to have a different conversation maybe than what has already happened. And so in addition to public safety and health, and housing, as Councillor Kerr suggested, I actually think social development, poverty reduction should probably be at the table. But the underlying issue that Councillor Grant, I think, has just identified, I think is another really important piece for us as a council to be advocating for. I think FCM in particular is looking, is advocating with the federal government for the way local governments are funded and can access.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Can access revenue, if that's what they always say. So like this ultimately is as Councillor Grant has said, an issue with our ability to raise taxes and raise revenues. So just pointing out that I think there's other advocacy for us to do on that front that would help.
And maybe better education on our end too. Like one topic of conversation that I had with the CAO from Courtney is the idea of an elected officials forum. And I think Jordan has been a part of that as well, about the need to bring people from our side of the house to educate or at least bring awareness to the municipal policing contracts and what the obligations are, what the pay formulas are, what those dollars go towards, what you're on the hook for, what the feds are on the hook for, and explain the intricacies of those obligations a little bit better, so that you go eyes wide open instead of just having to guess what and ask questions that are critical to your taxpayers that maybe could be clarified at the onset from people that this is their full-time job. I just act in it every once in a while. So.
Thank you. I think there's definitely an advocacy component, and as a region, we were successful recently getting some funding from Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Health together for a program. So I think there's always that conversation of those overlapping ministries to happen. We do want to talk about priorities, but I've made some notes for next meeting when we'll be kind of getting into reviewing our priorities list. It tends to be on the speeding and traffic, the assault and uttering threats file that's growing, mental health and the mental health CAR we can discuss, and general advocacy and priorities. So if there's anything you want to highlight from a Comox RCMP perspective that you think we should be discussing at our kind of follow-up meeting.
No, just that by now we would be have the plan constructed for our annual performance plan for the year. We usually have it constructed within the first couple weeks of April, so that we can start collecting the information and developing the initiatives to provide our service to the communities. Last year, from consultations with this council, as well as doing town halls, we had identified a number of priorities that represented, at least from the perspective of Comox, I believe it was, like you said, traffic, police visibility was another one, property crime, mischief and thefts, as well as mental health was a component. I have had some informal consultations, just a coffee with a cop that I've been doing with in towns and stuff. I had one this morning actually at the mill, and that just just to kind of canvass people's opinion and have regular, you know, organic conversations about things that are concerning them, and nothing really deviated from that. You know, the traffic was one of them. There was an assault that actually happened outside of Smitty's right there that we were called to and dealing with. And as well as mental health and visibility around the marina and the malls and stuff and all the things that you guys can tend to hear about. So if you're comfortable with it, discuss it certainly in council, get back to me. But I don't see a deviation from last year's, and we can certainly roll them over to this next coming year. And then I'll hopefully be able to give you a report as far as the efficacy of our plan last year and bring you some data, because that was also something that the city of Courtney said, like, well, how well did we do? And like, that's a good point. We never actually really discussed that, right? I don't know if other commanders have either, but I'm more than willing to come in and say, this is what we did. This is what we succeeded on. This is what we need to improve on. We're going to do better in here. And you guys get to see the results of our work.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I think the 5 items are almost identical to what we had last year, so not a lot of change there. I think potentially support around the advocacy, if we're going to be getting into some specific avenue channels, it's nice to have the information support channel open, but that's kind of a asterisk on our priorities moving forward. So before we wrap up on the Comox Valley RCMP discussion, are there any further questions for Inspector Mercer? Okay. Oh, Councillor Swift.
Mine's more a comment, and I know it's frustrating for all of us, and it's not a big criminal problem. But down at the marina, now that it's summertime, we're getting, you know, the cars there with their loud radios, and they're racing up and down the causeway, and then they take off through the community, and it's just so irritating.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a way to be useful to you, or you being able to actually help out with this problem. So I don't know if you have any.
So I just think we need to get into those areas a little bit more, right? And of course, the challenges that we've faced this past year in terms of some of the collapse units and that. I don't want to say that this is going to be a long-term thing. I'm hoping to get our bike unit back up and running, okay? Because they're really key to our police visibility and getting them out, especially during the summertime months. Sometimes we utilize our school resource officer and put her in the bike role too. So we're hoping to get her moving in that direction. So I think just getting into those spaces, Councillor Swift, and being more of a visible presence may deter people from being there. But as we've learned, you could have a cop on every corner and still things will eventually happen. But maybe we can change the behavior and then ward off, 30% of the people that are, joining in the activities, and then making it a little bit more pleasing to the people that live in that area, as opposed to just a constant nuisance and problem that you guys have to face. Because I've done the patrols myself out on Friday and Saturday night, and I've been flagged over by people saying, this car just took off and stuff. So we're aware of it, and we're trying to get out there. And the good news is we have another person coming to our municipal traffic unit, so we'll have 3 now, and that means more bodies on the road for traffic enforcement and visibility and stuff like that. So whether it's back road or even in the Comox community, we'll try and get them out there in a team and tackle some of these traffic problems that you guys are having.
Follow up with Mike.
Well, this is a separate issue, but just with the conversations that have taken place here tonight, I'm just wondering about any involvement with the base, and if there's any potential there to get any funding for mental health from any cases that you might deal with through problems with PTSD or any of the other mental health issues that have come as a result of.
They're pretty strict rules as far as the funding for police and stuff, but I also try and advocate for on behalf of Island Health, because like I said, they need 2 health resources too. So I'm talking to other communities that might have more of an in on the provincial side of the house, and even on the federal side of the house that might be able to contribute. I'm open to any ideas, right? I just know that when it comes to policing and paying for policing, it's either the province or the municipalities that deal with it, right? And the feds already put a portion share towards policing. So you guys are rolling over to a 90-10, I believe, soon. So you go down from 30 to 10% contributions from the feds, and there are the other communities that are 70-30 as well. So I think there's opportunity to discuss it. It's just we have to be creative on what we're looking to advocate that funding for and to what area.
Is there any further discussion or questions from council? Okay, well, I will say on behalf of council, thank you for doing new innovative services and projects. The Coffee with a Cop, I didn't realize that would be yourself, but that's great to see. And the leadership from you in the last 2 or 3 years has been really appreciated in the community, as well as Sergeant Brennan, who's here this evening, Tori,
Who didn't
Monica.
have to say a word, by the way. He just came.
Very lucky not having to say a word, but I think we're very lucky for the officers and leadership we have in the Comox Valley, and we're going to have to continue to have this hard policing cost conversation, but it's definitely, there's a lot of gratitude for the people that we have here in Comox Valley, especially yourself. So thank you for the presentation. We look forward to all the further conversations that we'll be having in the near future.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for both coming. Okay, so with that, I will move for adjournment at 7:18. All those in favor? Everyone have a safe, pleasant evening.